This time you are not wearing our t-shirt.
Yeah, man, I know. I said it'll be a recording mistake ho jayega. But the best t-shirt is being worn by Ganesh, by the way. I just love that t-shirt that he has put out. Ganesh,
Uh,
you got to show that to all of us. Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I thought it was one of our team offsite t-shirts. I thought it makes sense on the context of
Yeah.
this.
It's beautiful. It is beautiful. So, Abhay, we have 1 minute to go. 4 sharp will start. I'll just take just a minute to introduce you and welcome everyone in, and that's it. Okay, you'll do the panel introductions, etc.,
Sure.
etc. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So, definitely looking forward to the fantastic insights from the session.
Vijeta, should we start? You are on mute, sir.
Yeah, ready to start. We have got more than 130 people, and I see the counter going up by the second. All right. So, very good evening, everyone. This is Vijeta Shastri here. I'm part of the TIE Bangalore team, extending a very, very warm welcome to each and every single one of you. Thank you so much for taking time out, and definitely we're going to have a very insightful conversation and engagement. Thank you so much to the Lowe's Innovation team as well. And Lowe's Innovation Labs, they are partners. But more than anything else, it's an absolute delight and pleasure to work with this fantastic team because we at TIE believe that fostering entrepreneurship, supporting the ecosystem, supporting the community and the startups, especially in today's challenging times, what can we do for them in terms of knowledge and mentoring and giving them as much opportunity for, of course, getting paid POCs. So I think, Abhay, it's 8 startups that you are working with right now and you're still looking out for more of these entrepreneurs and innovators, and you must talk about that. And without further delay, Abhay, over to you. So you can introduce our fantastic panel. And definitely, I think every single one of us will look forward to the knowledge, the education, and everything that is going to be happening around here, retail, AI, analytics. Looking forward. Over to you, Abhay. Let's go for it, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Vijeta, for the kind introduction. Very good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for taking our time today uh, on a Wednesday afternoon to join us and hear about analytics and AI and its application in retail. Before I get more deeper into the subject, let me just give you a quick introduction and context as well. So, Lowe's Innovation Labs is the innovation entity of Lowe's, which is a Fortune 50 home improvement retailer. In fact, it's a Fortune 50 company and the second largest home improvement retailer in the world, right? Where we're catering to about 18 million customers every week through our omni-channel presence across US and Canada. We have a strong technology and business operations team in India as well. And I'm part of that. I head Lowe's Innovation Labs in India. As I said, it's an innovation entity of Lowe's, and our intent, is primarily to work with partners across the globe to solve for various problems which our customers and associates are facing today, At the same time, how can we power or usher in the future of home improvement retail, right, in the future? So basically, it covers both the segments, which is incremental and disruptive innovation. And as part of that, we started a webinar series a few months back, which is called Retail 2020 and Beyond. This is the fourth webinar as part of the same. In the past, we have focused on consumer tech, we have focused on stores tech, supply chain tech, and this time we have an amazing panel here with us who's going to be talking to us a little bit more about how do we power up retail with AI and analytics, right? And without spending more time on setting more context on that, let me quickly introduce you to all the panel members. Maybe I think everyone is on, at least on video. So let me first call out the first panelist that we have today is Vijay Nair, who's the Senior Director for DACHI, which is Data Analytics and Computational Intelligence at Lowe's. And he's responsible globally for pricing and promotional analytics, along with being the site leader for the team in India, as well as the overall analytics team in India as well. Thank you so much, Vijay, for joining us today.
Thanks, Abhay. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you. The second we have is Ganesh Subramaniam, who's the co-founder and CEO of Stylumia. He's been an ex-Myntra, Walmart, Reliance Retail, and Tommy Hilfiger. You know, he's brought in a lot of experience for so many years working in the fashion space and retail space specifically as well. And it's also amazing to see that we are working with Ganesh as well as part of the program that we have in India. We're working and partnering together for one of the POCs that we are doing. Third we have is MS Subramaniam Money, fondly called as Money as well. And he's the head of category marketing and analytics at Big Basket. And he's also the author of Saying No to Jugaad. Thank you so much, Ganesh and Money, for joining us. And on that note, last but not the least, we would like to welcome Anurag Banerjee, who's the co-founder of Quill.ai. Anurag is also an advisor to multiple companies, and there's so much more to what Anurag has been doing in terms of his experience in the corporate and the startup world, right? So welcome aboard, Anurag. And on that note, we can kickstart the conversation if everyone is good with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So I think, before we deep dive into a lot more about what retail and analytics and AI has to offer, right, in terms of how do we solve for problems, the first thing that, I just wanted to set as a context was that today we see that, consumer patterns are changing in a very, very quick fashion, right? There's a lot of volatility in terms of technology availability. There's a lot of volatility in terms of how consumers are looking at frictionless and seamless experiences, right, from retailers. And that is where AI and analytics are playing a very, very strong role in shaping up those experiences and ensuring that, we are able to cater to the consumers in the best way possible. And not just consumers, a lot of our internal associates as well, right? How we're shaping up the whole space. And on that note, maybe what we can do is, let's start with, getting from all of you a small sense of, what are the key trends that you're seeing today in terms of retail analytics? If maybe in 2 minutes, each of you can talk a little bit about top 2 to 3 trends that you're seeing in the world of retail analytics, that would be good as an opener. And then we can deep dive into various subjects post that. Maybe Vijay, you want to start off?
Yeah, sounds good, Abhay. So I think in the interest of time, I'll probably cover 2 or 3 that I think are very, very relevant and something that will make a true difference for retail in the future, right? So the first trend I want...
Vijay, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, clear.
All right. Sorry about that. So I was just saying, Abhay, in the interest of time, I'll probably cover about top 2 or 3 and then kind of, leave it to the rest of the panel to cover the others. So 3 things that come to mind, very, very importantly from a physical retail perspective, right? So the first thing is analytics at the edge. So good example of that is think about store employees and think about how can they provide a very superior experience to customers walking into store, right? So if we were to replicate the experience of personalized recommendation that we have on our websites into our stores, one of the ways we could do it is to enable store employees to access information on things like handheld devices that can provide things like real-time recommendations to customers, provide recommendations in terms of both products as well as projects, given we are a product and a project retailer. Another good example of analytics at the edge is think of, self-service kiosks where, they use image recognition, for example, to understand if a product that's actually being scanned is the one that's actually being put into the customer's bag, and to check fraud and stuff like that. So that's one big trend, right? The second thing, I'm a firm believer that it's business that drives analytics and not the other way around, right? And if you look at what's happening to the business at the moment, I think Ganesh, you touched upon it right at the beginning when we were having a chat. Businesses are very quickly becoming omni-channel and hyper-local. I know those are two big buzzwords, but that's happening really, really quickly as we speak, right? So algorithms around things like real-time pricing, how do you determine which fulfillment location you serve a customer from, what should be dynamic delivery pricing, all of that is sort of becoming emerging problems that are tough, but both interesting to solve from a retail analytics perspective, right? And the third thing is, I think, what I would call back to the basics, right? Now, we're all in awe of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and all of that stuff, right? But the reality is, given a dynamic situation like COVID at the moment, one of the things that has really made a big comeback is rapid insights, right? So essentially the need for things like self-service BI at scale, answering questions really, really quickly so that businesses can take a decision, etc. So those are probably three trends I would call out.
Thanks so much, Vijay, for sharing those. Right, maybe we can have Ganesh. You go next and talk to us a little bit about some of the key trends that you're also noticing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks everyone for this opportunity. What I see is, I think COVID is an awakening of what businesses should have done maybe a few years back. I would therefore take the COVID context. Now, let me bring the context of fashion and lifestyle retail. Now, what's happening here is that, the consumer trends are changing so fast. Overnight, people are not buying, for example, bottom wear. Overnight, people are buying a lot of loungewear. A lot of retailers have planned for this season, this time period, 1 year back. The supply chains are very, very long and very static view of consumers. And therefore, this has led to is a lot of retailers are paralyzed. Now, therefore, what is the need of the hour is, I would put it in 2-3 themes. The theme number one is, you just need to be adaptive as an organization. Therefore, how can technology help to make a retailer very, very adaptive? I think Vijay touched upon that. Now, adaptive means that you just need to be having a real-time intelligence. You might have real-time intelligence, but you also need to do real-time response. So I think the role of analytics will be to have real-time intelligence and then adapt. The second is that automate. For today, we see a lot of organizations retailers are actually doing a lot of manual work. It goes through hierarchy of decision-making to finally take the action. So how do we cut down that? It's automation. For automation and adapt, if you bring that together, then actually that becomes intelligence. Now, the second theme I would like to touch upon is, when we say that analytics and AI, a lot of analytics is happening around a retailer's own data. Now, just imagine the consumer is not just seeing your own offering. The consumer is getting to see the plethora of offerings in the market. So what do you really mean by data? Is the data the data I own, or is the data which is in the public domain? So I think the whole question of what does data mean itself, are we using a holistic view of the consumer data and then taking decisions, so that even this automation and adapt, if you do with your own data, you're going to be very, very limited. Are we getting a 360-degree view of the customer and taking decision making? For data is the second theme. And the third one is, I would say that the culture of the organization to go through this whole process, right? Now, I think that whole digital transformation, the urgency to move through this path is a theme that I'm seeing, and I'm sure that we can discuss all of this in detail as we move forward.
Thank you so much, Ganesh. It was good to know, the different themes that you spoke about, right from data to, the culture. Maybe on that note, Mani, we can have you talk a little bit about the top two or three trends that you're also seeing in the space of retail analytics.
Thanks, Abhay. Good to be here with Vijay, Anurag, and Ganesh. And the challenge with being the third or the fourth person in a panel dominated by very smart folks is all the talking points are taken, right? So I've got to now invent things to say, but that's it. Vijay and Ganesh highlighted very critical, important things. And so I don't want to repeat what they've covered already. I'm going to quickly talk about maybe two trends that I see. Trend number one that I see is Vijay used the term personalization. Ganesh used a variant of that, but I talk about tailored experiences for customers, right, in retail, so that you are sort of not getting into territory of hyper personalization that is beginning to now sound creepy, but sort of curate their experience through the journey, even though it may be a repetitive job that they may be doing, particularly when it comes to the world of grocery shopping. Could you tailor their or curate their shopping list? Could you curate their recommendations, recognizing what they are going to need, but haven't bought from you, and could you make that easy for them? Could you curate their payment experience or tailor the payment experience that makes it easy? Could you, sort of tailor the delivery experience by ensuring that you reach them in their preferred time slots, and do that in a manner that makes the experience very smooth for the customer, right? So the tailored experience using data is going to be very, very critical, and I think that's what is going to help organizations differentiate one from another. The second element that I wanted to call out is also something that Ganesh alluded to, right? That there is data, and what data are you talking about? Public data, private data, and what do you define as a data domain? For me, more important, dimension in that is what do you do with the data? With enormous amount of digitalization happening, particularly for firms like ours, Big Basket, that was born digital. There is data flowing in every minute, every second. Like Ganesh said, real-time data just flows in. What do you do with it? So the mandate now for the analytics team and the trend that's going to emerge increasingly is that just don't throw numbers, don't throw trends, but make it insight, make it actionable insight. It's not to say that your sales is dipping, but to say that the sales is dipping because your quality dipped, quality standards dipped, and make this definitive. By that, it becomes unarguable. People are not debating whether the number is right, whether the insight is right, whether the action is right. Make it definitive. And therefore, that's a term that we repeat, frequently use at Big Basket. We call it DAI, definitive actionable insight. So that's increasingly going to become an important need, because people are not going to measure the volume of data that you have, but the quality of insights that you get out of it. And lastly, and this is something that would love to talk about a little later, is the humanless element of retail. Both the back end and the front end increasingly becoming humanless is going to begin to happen as a long-term trend. And we'll talk about it if there's an option to cover that later on. The back end is going to become automated to the extent possible. The front end is going to become automated to the extent possible, allowing for customers to have a frictionless experience. And that's a third trend that I see emerging in retail in the coming months, in the coming years.
Thank you so much, Mani. It was good to understand more about from your lens about hyper-personalization, definitive, actionable insights, and of course, into human-less experiences as well, right? And that's going to be very interesting going forward, some of those key trends that you spoke about as well. And probably we should be able to cover some of these. These are interesting points all of you have brought in so far. Anurag, on that note, would you like to share some of the key trends that you're also observing?
As Mani said, it's really impossible to go forth on these things. But they're two smaller pieces, not as critical as the themes that my co-panelists mentioned. One is we do a lot of work in China, and what we've been observing in the last 3-4 months there is that there is a smoothening of the experience on your feed. So a lot of us talk about personalization, and what it has meant historically is always about getting an offer in some shape or form, right? I'm generalizing very broadly there. But it's an offer with some sequence, right? Some time, some objective, some material. And all our Facebook feeds are cluttered with such personalization. And we're seeing a very nice shift happening in the feed personalization that's happened in China. I think it's a matter of time before it gets absorbed around the world. A long-term trend that I'm very passionate about, and I see this in fashion, and I'm sure Ganesh also sees this quite clearly, is the amount of waste that's going down. So the people are thinking about, to the point I think one of them made, about the fact that a lot of stuff in stores today was designed, thought of, went on runways 6, 8 to 12 months ago. And that has now resulted in this massive unsold inventory that ends up in landfill. And I think people and retailers and fashion houses are increasingly thinking about how to reduce that footprint. And I think if you can execute on that, that would be an amazing long-term trend for us to see in retail.
Thank you so much, Anurag, for highlighting some of those points as well. Great to know that. Specifically around the smoothing of those experiences in China, right? I'm going to be probably probing you a little bit more on that front as well. Very interesting and intriguing topic, especially when it comes to the relationship with China as well, in terms of what are the trends that we are seeing there too. Uh, on that note, Vijay, one of the things that you had mentioned right at the beginning was a combination of rapid insights in the omnichannel environment, right? And how that's so critical today. As at the same time, you also mentioned about business driving analytics, right? So I was just thinking about it from a home improvement standpoint, and I thought that given the current situation as well, and even prior to that, I've seen that home improvement is the fastest growing retail segment. Now, given the diverse assortment categories and the focus on two different types of customers that we have that we are serving, can you share some key ways to transform and leapfrog those experiences using AI and analytics?
Sure. I'm just checking. I'm not on mute. All right. So, Abhay, I think that's got multiple questions within one question, right? So I'll try answering that as briefly as possible. So, to me, there are three things that's extremely important from sort of leapfrogging using analytics, AI, whatever you call it, right? The first thing is know your business really in and out, right? So you spoke about home improvement and the nuances of home improvement. So let me give you a quick example, right? So we have two kinds of customers, what we call do-it-yourself and pro customers, right? So do-it-yourself, think of it as B2C customers, so customers coming into our store, purchasing stuff for their houses and stuff like that. And pro are what we call professional or contractors who come in and buy stuff in order to fix things on the job site and do work for other customers, right? So typically like a B2B model. Now, if you think of typically B2C and B2B, most of us will agree that it's B2C that drives volume in most businesses, and B2B is probably more the bulk and big purchases, right? We've got a unique situation at Lowe's where our B2B also drives volume for us, right? So think about it in the home improvement sector. Customers probably walk in a few times in a year to repair their houses, remodel their houses. But you have these contractors walking in week over week to kind of get stuff done. And what that implies from an analytics perspective is when we think of simple things like customer segmentation models, we've got to keep it really, really separate from whether it's a pro, whether it's a DIY. The way we come up with marketing offers for B2B is very, very different from B2C, and how do we model that becomes extremely important, right? So those nuances and the corresponding analytics becomes very different. So that's the first part. Second part is, I think for me, it is start with the business need rather than the algorithm, right? So most of us, we take a hammer and then figure out how to solve any problem that kind of comes across. But the idea over here is, how do you start with a business need that is very, very challenging or that needs to be solved very quickly, and how do you apply the right solution to it? Good example of that, we've talked of recommendation engines and stuff like that. So if you buy a shirt, you suggest a trouser and so on and so forth, right? Now, how do you adapt that to the home improvement industry? So think of the home improvement industry. For us, some of the big ticket items are not the products that customers buy, but are the projects that customers are involved in. So if you're remodeling your kitchen, if you're remodeling your bath, etc. Now, if you think about that situation, it becomes from a product recommendation to a project recommendation. So one of the things that we did was to understand, the path to purchase. So depending on the items that you bought, right, determine what project you might be involved on and take advantage of that information, provide you free consulting services as well as products. That sort of tremendously increased. Again, it's about solving that business need and not necessarily blindly applying an algorithm in there, right? The third bit, and this is becoming increasingly the trend, is anything that you develop from an AI and analytics perspective has to be explainable, right? And we can talk about this for hours together, but broadly, there are 4 reasons why you would make something, explainable and something that the business can understand. First, it increases trust as far as the business is concerned. So they know, for example, what it really is rather than just a black box. It removes bias. It increases adoption because human beings now feel that instead of a black box taking a decision, they are equally participating in the decision making process, and therefore it increases adoption, right? So those are sort of 3 things I would think of when I think of how do you leapfrog using probably AI and analytics.
Thank you so much, Vijay. I think Yeah, as you mentioned, it's a very different world altogether, right? Where most of the understanding or typical practices that we have observed, is not necessarily always applicable in a home improvement sector, and that was good to know given the kind of consumer patterns that we are seeing as well. Uh, and on that note, Ganesh, let me ask you this question, which comes in with your background of fashion. Uh, there's a lot of intrinsic creativity and cultural nuances in fashion, right? And it's kind of not very easy to always predict fashion, right? And you seem to have mastered that, right? Given your current startup as well. What are some of the key challenges that that you face while building a data-driven solution, keeping in mind that fashion has a lot of aesthetic elements, a lot of variables which are not always very tangible, at least to a normal eye it doesn't seem to be very tangible. So what are the data driven models that you've built, or how have you managed to solve for that?
Yeah, Abhay. And I just want to acknowledge what Vijay mentioned, that business drives AI and analytics. Now, before I answer that question, I just want to get a preamble to say that businesses actually, there are a lot of inputs, then we take a lot of decisions and we get outcomes, right? We all keep talking about data science, right? Now, in our view, it's not data science, where what we are enabling is decision science, right? If data doesn't enable decision, and decisions are for a business outcome, right? Now, if you get that fundamental right, then we are empowering decision making. Now, let me bring that to the context of fashion, irrespective whether it's a creative space, whether it's a non-creative space. If you just look at the key decisions a retailer makes, a retail is actually in fundamentally simple. It's actually, create, buy, move, sell. Now, simplistic form, this could be retail, right? Now, the question here is if you have to enable the decisions in the create space. Now, in create space, the kind of questions people ask is, what kind of trends should I be spotting? What kind of products should I be making that customers really love my products? Now, the kind of problems that we are solving is, of course, we are from the industry, therefore we empathize with the users. So we are not going with the technology and throwing at them. What we are basically saying that, you have a lot of challenge today. You have struggled in deciding out of plethora of, the consumer data which is available today, what trends to pick. So what we have done is we have reduced the noise in the data. Stylomy is just a filter today. In few clicks, if you really want to know what are the winning trends in US in a given category, in a given price point, and a given genre, in few seconds, you have results. Now, how that helps is that I don't need to waste my time traveling the world, analyzing, making my judgments. Now they have ready-made answers to these questions, so they pick the creative ideas fast. In fact, the stickiest of our customers today are all the creative folks. Right now, see, that tells you, right, and that's a real value on the ground, that it was not an easy journey. It's very important for us to ensure that their life becomes simple. And the final fruit of the pudding is whatever decisions you took out of the platform, did they really perform well? Did consumer like it? And I think we have now, over a period of last 3.5 years, we have established that there is a revenue lift of over 60% on the products that we made using intelligence. Inventory comes down by half, and profit grows, right? And we have eliminated waste of over 60 million garments since inception so far. Now, if you put all of this data together, that unless analytics and AI really solve a business problem, help people take decisions, and we have been going through that journey, continuously learning. And I think even with our interaction now with Lowe's, there is a constant learning. And unless we solve a real problem, startups like us don't exist.
Thank you so much, Ganesh. That was very interesting to understand coming from your perspective. How do we look at that lens, right? So thank you so much for sharing those views. Moving to another different segment, which is into the Indian grocery delivery space, right? Mani, I would now like to hear your views. You did mention as one of the trends as humanless experiences, right? So smart humanless experiences or retail basically is a rising trend globally. And interestingly, the global self-checkout systems, the market size was about $2.8 billion in 2019 and is expected to grow significantly, right, from 20 to 27 as well. In India, humanless retail is dominated by vendor machines. Given that context, and that too primarily in the corporate and healthcare side, what according to you are few opportunities and roadblocks that you see from a smart retail standpoint, given that this is an evolving space in India as well?
Uh, Very important question, Abhay. Particularly when you talked about it, right? There are opportunities, but there are also roadblocks, and it's important to recognize them. I look at smart humanless retail as combining a few things. Number one is a term that you used early on, frictionless. There are many challenges when you get into manned retail, and you want to eliminate those friction points, so make it frictionless. To the extent possible, make it cashless and make it unmanned, right? So that's the next generation retail, and that's going to be the future. And we already are seeing that trend emerge in many nations, particularly in the US, allowing for people to walk in, buy, and leave with, without the option to have to meet a human through the whole shopping experience, right? But we only look at that, and that makes the news because it's cool to talk about. But smart retail also involves looking at the back end and making that smart as well, making it humanless as well. That's already been happening for a while. If you look at actions, outcomes that can be made programmatic, then you're talking about smart retail or humanless retail. For example, computing forecasts. Do you need a buyer to do that? Can you have systems generate that automatically, converting that to net stock that is required, and therefore raising POs and sending out those POs to your vendors, getting acknowledgements from them, and planning the receipt of those items that are going to come in, right? All of that is already getting fully automated with little or no human intervention happening in those steps. Now, extend that in the backend to machines, robots, doing receiving, stacking, picking. That's beginning to happen as well. Many organizations globally as well as in India are beginning to deploy machines and robots to automate some of these activities that can become programmatic in nature, right? So that's the back end of the retail. Now look at the front end of the retail, which is the customer facing portion. We have apps, websites, particularly when it comes to e-commerce. Even those entities are now beginning to become fully automated, humanless. What catalog do I show to a customer? What prices do I show to the customer? What recommendations do I show to the customer? What offers do I show to the customer? What payment offers do I show to the customer? All of these are now getting automated because these are data driven. They can be programmed. Humans add very little value in terms of decision making, and therefore you can automate them. So that's beginning to happen. So what is then left is the last mile, right? This is where the human interaction happens. In the world of Big Basket, it's when the delivery person goes to the customer to deliver. And we're beginning to focus on that. And there are talks about drones and smart locks that allow delivery persons to walk in, deliver items. I think those are some of the things that are emerging as trends. But in the world of BB, we are actually moving from the vending machines to smart kiosks, which are called BB Instant machines. They're set up in apartments and corporate facilities. So you walk in, you use an app, the door opens, you pick up the item, and because you are now able to personalize the experience for the customer, unlike a vending machine where somebody puts in a note or a coin and picks an item and walks away with no idea of who it was, what happened. With smart retail, you are beginning to recognize that this is a customer whose preferences are these. You also begin to recognize through data when a sale happened and what products sell well in what hours, when does replenishment need to happen, and so on. So the smart kiosks are beginning to become very common. We today have upwards of 1,000 machines installed across corporates and apartments, and they were of big help to customers, particularly in apartment complexes when nearby Kirana stores and others were shut down. People were turning to these machines to pick up with little or no human intervention at all happening, and the back end to that also is getting increasingly automated. So these are great opportunities. How do you use smart kiosks and unmanned stores to make the smart, grocery experience a smoother experience, a frictionless experience for customer? But it's also important to recognize the roadblocks in this. Number one is that how do you make this inclusive? Today, the nearby Kirana allows customers of all types, all demographics, all backgrounds to walk in, buy, and make informed decisions. If you move them all to smart kiosks, are you going to cut out a segment of these customers and keep them away? Particularly those that don't have access to smartphones, and more importantly, those that when you move to a cashless format, do you exclude them because they don't have payment methods that are electronic in nature? So you've got to think about how are we going to bring in smart humanless retail that continues to be inclusive. In the US, for example, courts have clearly decreed that some of these emerging humanless retail stores need to continue to accept cash and not exclude the populations that may not have access to electronic payment methods. And so that's going to be one of the critical challenges that we'll tackle so that we continue to make retail inclusive, serving a variety of demographics. So those are what I see as opportunities and challenges in the coming days when it comes to smart humanless retail.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mani. Good to understand across the overall value chain of retail, right? How do we create those humanless experiences? It's interesting to see that, there are certain categories where, it's very important to have that human experiences because, that's the kind of strength that, or personalized experiences that humans can provide. But there's certain areas which are very clearly, can be made or converted into humanless as well. Of course, there are inclusivity challenges, and then we'll have to look at that. How do we create that kind of environment? But great to get your thoughts on that. Since we were talking about inclusivity, maybe Anurag, maybe I can ask this question to you. Given your expertise as well on the subject, AI is definitely a very powerful concept, right? And increasingly, many people are also getting a little scared of its capabilities. And specifically, like blue collar workers are getting more and more. They're basically having this fear that they might just lose their jobs, right? As someone who operates right at the cutting edge of AI for solving for human problems, what are a few myths or misconceptions, according to you, around AI? And do people really need to worry about some of these?
Look, at least once a day we get asked this by somebody in some shape or form, and my answer is always a stock answer, which is half the time Wi-Fi doesn't work, so you shouldn't really worry about an AI takeover. We spend a lot of time on interesting new things like GPT-2 and GPT-3 and a bunch of other image stuff, and processing petabytes of video a day. And there's clearly a movement that's going to happen, right? And as Mani so articulately pointed out, that there is efficiencies being built, humanless retail will happen front end, back end, and my co-panelists know that. I think that it isn't about AI taking away jobs as much as the fact that most of us will have, if you're graduating college now, you have a 60-year career, right? And so what you learn in college is going to be irrelevant within 6 months or 2 years or 3 years of coming out. So it's less about we will all have job losses in some shape or form, but the number of jobs that will come up, like if you go back 10 years, could you even think about a social media manager being a job, right? And here we are, right? Millions of these people exist in some shape or form. A content manager, right? That was not a thing in 1999, and here we are. There's some of the prime jobs that exist. So my point of view is, yes, there will be a certain amount of job loss. There will be some specificity that will that will impact retail and overall job loss. But there are opportunities that will come out of that. There are more people, attached to the car industry and the horse industry, right? If you go back 100 years on this thing. And my take, and I'm not as smart as Elon Musk, is the AI takeover is far away. Like singularity is not coming anytime soon.
Thank you so much, Anurag, for sharing this pointers. And I think I'm sure, right? This is something that because you're experts in these areas. It's something that you can obviously see that AGI is pretty far off and so on and so forth, right? I mean, singularity is still pretty far off from here. But yeah, I mean, to a lot of people, who are actually working in that environment, they're sometimes scared that, when we talk about internally in corporate environments, or sometimes even externally, when we start talking about AI and how humanless experiences come in, that's where they get very apprehensive, and they're like, should we really trust AI at this point of time? That's the reason this question comes to you more often than not, as you said, every day, at least, in a form or the other. But one of the points that both Mani and Anurag you highlighted was also about efficiencies, right? How does AI bring in that efficiency? And on that note, Vijay, just wanted to get your perspective on this. In a large corporate environment, analytics is also as much about internal customers as it is about external customers, right? Given that you lead analytics, can you talk a little bit about the use cases at Lowe's where we have improved cost and efficiency through use of AI analytics, right? Specifically looking at how we can create the life, also enhance the lives of our internal customers, associates.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. So it's a very relevant question, Abhay, because most times when we talk about AI ML, we're thinking of the end customer or the external customer as opposed to the internal customer. But what I can tell you is if you look at our analytics AI ML teams, typically 30 to 40% of folks are dedicated towards making either something more cost efficient or something, much more efficient from a process perspective and stuff like that. So a couple of examples come to mind, and I'm kind of keeping it brief given the time here, right? So two examples that I'll talk about. One is sort of what we call store scheduling, right? So we spend billions of dollars on payroll, right? And if you think about it, making that even 10% more efficient saves us huge amount of cost. But even more than the cost, it's about how do we make it efficient so that there is a store associate available at the right time when a customer walks in. Now, it might be important for retail in general, but why it's more important for home improvement retail is most customers come in, wanting to get inspired by an idea, an experience, a project, etc. So it's extremely important that we have, store associates in when customers walk in. So we've done this project which essentially optimizes staff scheduling, taking into account a number of variables. It's essentially a really scaled out system that store managers could have access to, schedule their staffing schedules in a way where you have the right set of experts in store at the right time so that they are able to give customers the most optimal experience from there. So that's one part of it. Then the second part of it, which I'm sure pretty much every retailer out there is doing, but I'll call it out anyway, is delivery scheduling, right? So our omni-channel retail, if you've looked at our last quarter, has grown by triple digits, right? I mean, in terms of deliveries that we're doing online. And one of the biggest challenges that comes with that is how do you efficiently schedule these deliveries so that you can save cost, but also, deliver to the customer in the quickest possible way, right? So our teams have been working on optimized delivery scheduling. And the challenge over here, again, talking about the nuance of home improvement retail, is that we have multiple fulfillment locations depending on the type of product that you're ordering. So you could order anything from a light bulb, which is a really small product, to something as big as an appliance, or something even as strange as lumber or wood, right? So depending on what you're ordering and whether it's part of the same order, it's getting fulfilled from a variety of fulfillment centers. And how do you optimize all that and schedule your deliveries was like a really interesting and challenging problem to work on. So those are two things that I want to touch upon a bit.
Thank you so much, Vijay. It gives a good perspective into how things shape up internally as well, right? And how that's creating a positive impact, right, in terms of efficiency play as well, and in terms of even eventually impacting the end customers too. So, I was just thinking, one of the things that we were just discussing about, one of the point that came out was how I don't know if I'm not wrong. You mentioned about Elon Musk also talking about singularity, right? I mean, Elon Musk talks about this. Sam Altman has his own perspective. David Ng and a lot of others are talking about, how AI models are getting more and more mature. Right? It's getting mature to the extent that today it's impacting the world of arts as well. We are talking about artificially synthesizing music, artificially synthesizing art, artificially synthesizing design patterns, and so on and so forth. Right? Ganesh, I was just thinking that maybe you can help us answer this question. What role do you think AI will play in the near future to create a much more enhanced world of arts and fashion, right? So far, it's been seen, and there are purists, people who call themselves purists, who are, who always expect humans to be doing their job. The people who are saying that, there has to be a hybrid model. What, according to you, is the way to go about it, and how do you see that situation evolving? Ganesh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry for that. At a principle level, I think AI should enable moving from an information science to a decision science to an action engine. I think all of us are looking for actioning, right? Even in action, I'm saying that, can you action before I think I need it? Can you predictively action? Now, if we take this abstraction and let's look at creativity, and today creativity is also a function of seeing a lot of stuff. Let's say designers travel all around the world, come back, and then say, okay, out of what I saw, I like this. And then interpret that and create a new avatar and new design. Now, just look at the fashion industry. 2/3 of the products made, customers don't like. That is the amount of wastage we are talking about in a $3 trillion industry. Going with human intuition, leave alone, whether we are creating, etc. But I think colossal waste of resources, energy, second most carbon footprint industry in the world, which means that fundamentally we don't understand what consumers really like. Now we have to bridge this gap and still do creation, which brings in newness. At the same time, it is productive and effective. For where we see is that all the technologies, whether we have our GAN engine generating designs, can we therefore use technology like GANs to help designers create designs which have high probability of winning? They are new at the same time, they have high probability of winning, and it ticks a lot of tick marks. Number one, you create design which wins in the market, it reduces wastage, economic improvement, sustainability going up, right? So where we see is that wherever we can action, help decision makers action, it could be in the creative space, it could be in the distribution space, it could be in the estimation space, across the value chain. That's where we see it going. And it's not about using technology for deep learning. I think, I would call it deep understanding. So have deep understanding through technology. If deep learning helps you do deep understanding, use that. The question is that use technology to create deep understanding of the consumers and bring relevant propositions. And that will be the engine that the retail, would be looking for in the future.
Thank you so much, Ganesh, in giving your take on the whole situation. How that's evolving as well. Mani, given that we are in a pandemic situation, this has always fascinated me, and I think it's impacting our lives even more. Right? I've always looked up to Big Basket in terms of one of those companies in the country, where the last mile delivery and happened so quickly, where consumers could request for something in terms of groceries, and we could get that delivered in 2.5 hours. In the pandemic situation, that has really been further helpful, where a lot of households are stocked because of Big Basket's deliveries, right? And for me, the interesting aspect was that it takes in many cases only 2.5 hours also, right, or a few hours, right? Given that that was one of the breakthroughs that we see in India, where it's already a very complicated market. You just do not know which road has a pothole or which road is closed, or what do the house numbers on a long street look like, right? I mean, which is stretching for about 5 kilometers. Even in those complexities, we've been able to manage to get our timing so high, right, in a complicated market like India. From that standpoint, that was a really good breakthrough. Is there anything else that you're working on which could be so disruptive in the near future, given how situation is changing around for us?
So thanks for that feedback, Abhay. Good to hear that from one of our customers about how we've sort of been there for you when you need it and met your needs. Technology is very important for us, and we continue to look at opportunities to deploy technology, deploy analytics, and try transforming customer experience and the experience for other stakeholders as well. A couple of areas that I'm very excited about in terms of what we are doing there is, one is the humanless retail. Even though we've deployed 1,000 machines across corporates and homes, I don't think we've touched the lives of all our customers, and so we'll continue to focus on that. Some fantastic things happening there. But the more important thing that I want to talk about is the backend, where we are applying technology, particularly focused on integrating this all the way to the farmers. We work with farmers directly. We disintermediate the supply chain that brings in middlemen and robs the farmers off the appropriate sort of dues that they need to get for the produce that they bring to the market, right? And so we focus on delivering some key outcomes for them. Number one is financial inclusion. So using technology, we ensure that farmers get their payments within 24 to 48 hours, which allows them to sort of see the rewards for the produce that they brought to the market, right? So that's number one. Number two is we engage agronomists who work as consultants. So we work with the farmers, collect data about their crop patterns, sowing plans, harvest details, and allow the agronomists to use this data and advise farmers either in person or in these days, remotely. And through that, ensure that the farmers are able to make changes to their sowing patterns or harvest patterns to align with what market trends are. And thirdly, to ensure that the crop availability and the harvest schedule are planned so that the farmers are able to plan their procurement at the best price with minimal wastage of their crops, so that they see benefit from all of this engagement with us. We in fact want to get to a point where farmers 100% offer they produce to us and work with us with the full trust, knowing that they couldn't be a better partner for them than anyone else. And for all of this, we use technology. We are continuing to build apps that the farmers could use in the simplest possible manner that allows them to sort of engage with us, key in data, and allow technology analytics to make the whole process of harvest to, or rather sowing to harvest to selling the produce become smooth and frictionless for them, and through that gain financial benefits, right? So that's the area that I'm very enthusiastic about, and we've made some tremendous progress in that area.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mani. I mean, it feels good to know about the contribution on the agri side. There's a vertical integration involved, there's product provenance. So I think overall it looks pretty good, right, for everyone involved in terms of all the stakeholders. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're running out of time, but I just want to make sure that, I ask this question to Anurag as well, and then we can open up the questions for the audience too. Anurag, given that we have spoken about different industries and how you are one of those people who's working on a lot of different industries, right? From social impact to FMCG to retail and so on, to fashion and so on and so forth, right? As per our understanding, you dedicate 25% of your time on moonshot ideas. What I would be very, very curious to know is what exactly are you working on? Is there something that you can publicly share? And it would be very, very interesting to know a little bit more about some of those moonshot stuff that's happening behind the scenes, and what's coming out of it.
Thanks, Abhay. Well, so it's not retail specific, so I'll keep it brief to respect the audience. But we spend, as Abhay said, 25% of our time. There are 3 topic areas that Quilt focuses on. One is climate change. One is mental health leading to depression, and anything in the middle. And one is child safety and gender equity in that sort of broad space. So we've been doing some pretty cool stuff on prevention of child porn being trafficked online. So we worked with governments and Interpol and certain other organizations in that space. On climate, we just launched, I think, last week, our public good products. So eventually we'll launch a lot of public good products that'll take a lot of this data and make them as assets that any NGO can use. So we have tracked about 4,000 cities, and any mayor, any city person can go in, or district collector can go in and try and solve a problem for their city. But yeah, that's what gets us awake in the morning to come. We also do retail, but yeah, thanks for asking, Abhay.
Thank you so much, Anurag, for sharing those, the different things that you're doing. And it's kind of very interesting to know that, there's so much more of impact that can be created as well. On that note, there are a bunch of questions that we've got, we would love to, I have a bunch of more questions actually, to be very honest, for all of you. Given that, we are almost towards the end of the session, I'll have to curtail that and make sure that, we have a lot of people in the audience, and maybe they can get to ask their questions as well, right? So we've received a few of them. We'll keep collecting more, but then at this point of time, Ganesh, there's a question for you, which talks about, do you see AI for fashion extended to individual customers rather than just businesses anytime soon?
Yeah, is it from Nishta? I was just...
It's been answered.
Yeah, it's been answered on the chat, but for the purpose, I understand that question was meant to be saying that will AI reduce jobs and unemployment, and that's what actually she meant. The question here is, I think, reskilling. I think one of the panelists have already answered that. Reskilling is a must, and while reskilling, it should be based on the interest of the individual and also their strengths.
Thanks so much, Ganesh, for sharing that. I didn't realize that you already answered those questions. Okay, so maybe we can, one of the latest questions that has come in is on GPT-3, right? And I think, Anurag, you mentioned on that. Maybe from Vijay, Anurag, maybe you can share your perspectives on GPT-3 and its applicability in retail, given that Sam Altman himself says that, of course, it's been a buzzword. A lot of people have spoken about this, but it's not mature enough. There are enough problems already, that, they're still trying to get out of or evolve from, right? Or the kind of limitations that it has. Would you both want to share your perspectives on how GPT-3 can be applied to retail?
Sure. So, so we've used GPT-2 extensively, and now we've been playing with GPT-3. And I think both sets, as many people in the audience also might know, and analysts certainly know, it's a sequencing construct, right? With a ton of amazing information and from Reddit, et cetera, everywhere else. And 3 is a much bigger set and much bigger training set, and more models have been built on it. So I think for the application for retail, especially for retail advertising, so the copy creation of it, writing descriptions can be reasonably well done. We've seen, at least in the advertising things that we've tried out, but you still need to create, I think, a domain-specific training set before it's truly useful. It writes nice stories and nice paragraphs, but it runs out of steam on about sort of line 15, 16, it becomes weak.
All right. So, yeah, so I think hopefully in the GPT-4 version, we can have a more refined version, which can create long and short copies more effectively. I hope to see that as well. In terms of interacting. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, but maybe even in terms of hyper reality and tactile e-commerce. I'm just thinking out loud that this could be meaningful. But Vijay, what do you think? In terms of its application in retail as well.
Hey, Abhay, I wish, I was the expert. I can claim to be the expert on GPT-3, but I'm far from it. But what I do understand of GPT-3 is if you read certain blogs, it claims to do pretty much everything in life, right? So I don't know why we're waiting for GPT-4 and so on and so forth. But, if I kind of think about the applications to retail, I think there's like quite a few applications to retail. So I'll talk about 2 or 3 that come to mind. One is, call centers and all of the chatbots and all of those messaging that needs to happen, right? As you might know, most of the calls to our call centers is about where is my order? And then there's like a frustrating message on why don't you get it right and all of that stuff, right? But it's a good example of where GPT-3 can solve that problem really quickly, taking away costs, making it more efficient, etc. Think of a more, unique use case, which I'm sure there are bigger use cases, but think of a more unique use case, which is we spend a lot of time, money, and effort in terms of getting content right on our websites, right? Simply because we all know that better the content, better is the conversion on the website, right? And there's an army of people who kind of keep looking at this and trying to make content better. That's another area where I think GPT-3 can play a significant role. And right from being your personal assistant to writing your business case and probably even attending a webinar, I think there's scope for, doing all sorts of things, but those are probably 2 or 3 that I think are big impact.
Thank you so much, Vijay. Good to know that. I know it's also possibly, because from an innovation standpoint, sometimes you're also always trying to figure out what could that element be, right? Which can help us get to the next level, right? Leapfrog. That's you're always on a hunch and look out for something disruptive that can help us get there. So that's the reason, the curiosity from my side as well. On that note, right, I think what I understand from the chat is a lot of those questions have already been answered. If there are questions, could you please share those questions again? I'm mentioning this to the audience that, if there are any unanswered questions, please do share that with us and we'll get them answered. One of the questions that I want to understand or take from all of you, right, maybe all of you can take a minute or 2 to answer that. Any key advice that you have for the entrepreneurs who are working in this space while they build out, and take up this journey? Any key advice that you have from an AI and analytics space, specifically focused on retail?
Abhay, I would just take on this. I think a lot of time when you go with an innovation as a startup, right, our experience has been that if you fail, don't worry about, analyze your failure. Many of the failures are false failures. Now, false failure, what I mean by false failure is when an innovation do not get adopted, it is purely because of a structure. And I would recommend people to read this book called Loonshot. It's a book which talks about a structure of an organization doesn't make an innovation happen, not because your idea is bad. Therefore, look at working between innovation function like Lowe's has. You have an innovation and you have basically, I call the artist side of the business. And then there is a production side of the business, which is factory, which is running. If you take an innovation straight away production in the main line, then many a times people face failure. So ensure that your innovation goes through the right structure, right, and that don't get disgruntled because that the innovation failed sometimes. So analyzing that could be a huge, win for the future.
Thank you. Makes a lot of sense, Ganesh. Thank you so much for sharing that. Would any of you also like to share your perspective?
Sure. Here are three things that I want to share, Abhay. So number one is tackle the toughest problem, right? If you are a startup, for example, when we wanted to do online grocery, nobody believed that anyone would want to buy fruits, vegetables online without touching, feeling it, and getting a sense of it. How do we deliver that in the freshest manner possible to the customer that makes them believe that it is as good as it is of the same quality as they would have picked it if they had picked it themselves? It's a tough problem. We continue to work on it. Not to say that we have cracked it, but anywhere from 70 to 80% of all our orders have F&B, which is reflective of the fact that it's a hard problem. We tackled it, and through that we've been able to build loyalty and trust among customers. So never sidestep a hard problem. Never leave it for another day to solve. That's number one. Number two is focus on customers, particularly for e-commerce businesses. If you're running an offline store, you meet your customers every day, you get a chance to interact with them, get feedback, incorporate that in your process. Don't shy away from doing that, particularly if you're an e-commerce focused startup. Even today, we regularly call our customers, obviously do that in a systematic manner with a trained team, and don't bother customers often by calling them repeatedly. So we set all of those rules, but we still talk to them, get feedback whenever we see something that requires deep understanding from our customers, right? So continue to do that, talk to customers and get feedback from them. And number three is that, focus on data. Being part of the analytics team, I obviously believe in that, but I want to emphasize that for the startups, don't look back a year from now and wonder if you should have collected the data and used that data for making some informed decision making. So begin to focus on data from day one, build the team, build the architecture, build the culture to at least collect data so that you can get back to looking at it when you want to make some important choices in terms of business decisions, right? So those are three important callouts that I'll offer to startups.
Thank you so much, Mani, for sharing that. I'm sure this is going to be a very, very meaningful set of advices. Vijay, Anurag, do you guys also want to just share a few quick thoughts on that, or suggestions to or advice to entrepreneurs who are building out or starting on this journey?
Anurag, sorry, go on.
No, after you, please.
All right, sure. So Abhay, I think let me speak about it from a business perspective, right? As someone who's within, let's say, a big business like Lowe's, and what would really attract me in terms of working with startups, and what is some of the key advice? So two things I'd say, right? One is if you come to me with like a very a solution that basically you say is industry leading, that you have created for what you think will work best for Lowe's, etc., then I'm probably less inclined to listen to it rather than you being more empathetic towards what my needs exactly are. So the key value over there is listen, because in spite of whether you're a Fortune 1 or a Fortune 1000 company, there are many problems out there which are still unsolved, and even if they are solved, there's probably a much bigger scope to kind of improve it and stuff like that. So any amount of effort that you do as a startup in terms of understanding probably what are the pain points, and then addressing your solution to work on those pain points would be like a winner for me, right? Rather than coming up with a well-packaged solution to say, by the way, your competitor is using it, why don't you use it as well, right? So that's the only advice.
Thank you so much, Vijay. Very, very important point, which is find the right problem to solve for, and make sure that you're empathetic towards the problem that you're trying to solve for, and the business stakeholder who's talking about that, right? And again, thank you for sharing that. As a business stakeholder who's currently working on a particular POC that we are doing today, that's very interesting perspective that startups who are applying to Lowe's Innovation Labs can also think about. Anurag, again, last but definitely not the least, if you can share your perspectives as well.
Look, I think the other panelists said it perfectly. I think just copying a bit from Vijay and borrowing from Mani, I would just say a lot of startups are focused based on the desire to scale too fast. And I think let's just try and solve a problem in an empathetic way, as Vijay mentioned, and then you can apply scale to it. The rest follows from there.
All right, Anurag, thank you so much. On that note, I think we have just run a little over time. Thank you so much. I really want to thank all of you for joining us today and sharing your insights and perspectives. I also wanted to thank the Thai team as well as the Lowe's Innovation Labs team who's worked to put this together. But most importantly, thank you to the audience who's also taken out a little over an hour to spend this time with us. And hopefully, there's been a lot of good learning coming your way through the interaction that we have had and the experts who have shared their perspectives. I know there were a bunch of questions which have probably not been answered, but please do drop that in your chat, and we'll try our best to get some time off all our esteemed panelists, and hopefully get some answers to those questions as well. Hopefully in the next 1 week's time. Uh, and Vijeta, would you like to add something over here?
Yeah, thank you so much, Abhay. See, I think one of the questions that I would like to ask you is that from those 8 startups, and I think you should also, did you mention about the Entrepreneurship World Cup where two of your three startups, I think including Ganesh Stylumia has reached a certain level, right? Maybe you want to give a shout out because see, I want to talk very specifically, Abhay. You guys should talk about ecosystem, startups, innovation, what and all is happening around there that can really help. I mean, Anurag is there, Vijay, of course, from the Lowe's innovation team, you're there, and also definitely 100% we can do more for the community. So can you just throw a quick light on that, Abhay?
Sure, happy to. I think there were about 44,000 odd applications for the Entrepreneurship World Cup. That happens across the globe. From India, there were about 44,000 applications. Uh, Three startups from Construct by Lowe's Innovation Labs applied for that. All three of them were in the top 10, which was Stylumia, Rephrase, and Nanospan. And the top three winners, included both Stylumia and Rephrase, right? So amongst 44,000 applicants, the top two winners who are, who are now going to be representing India at a global stage are Stylumia and Rephrase. And I'm very, very happy that, they've been part of our program. And there's obviously that value in that partnership. And that's why we have partnered. Maybe Ganesh, if you want to add something over there from your experience standpoint, more than happy to listen to you.
My only two bits here is that first of all, thanks for this partnership with Lowe's. And what I tell other startups is all of these partnerships, right, really help you create validation. Because I think in startups, I think what is very important is your idea really validated? Are you adding value on the ground? I think every such partnership, I think please apply for it. And I'm sure if your use case is very relevant, you're going to get through. And go with what Vijay said, be empathetic with solving a real problem. And all of this really help. And everybody finally looking for 4 Ps: people, product, and predictability, and potential of that startup. Just look at these 4 Ps, and if you're aligned, then I'm sure it's not just these winning these, and every one of this helps us create visibility, and more customers come to us.
Thanks a lot, Ganesh, and thank you, Vijeta, for that nudge. I think sometimes with the conversations that go on, you forget to sell yourself. So I should have mentioned this right at the beginning that we are working with 8 startups and we are looking at partnering with more. If anyone is interested, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to provide our mail IDs. I'll leave it to the discretion of the panelists if they want to share their mail IDs or contact details. But yeah, so Vijay, over to you again.
Thank you so much, Abhay and Ganesh. That was very nicely done. So I want to give a personal anecdotes, okay? A couple of things very quickly. One is about Ganesh. Remember, Abhay, he's also come from the Reliance retail world, right? So he was one guy who used to always be with customers on the shop floor. Now he's a digital guy. But, I remember Ganesh, when Reliance Trends was there downstairs at Richmond Road, used to always come there, used to talk to customers, used to watch them, observe them, share with your team. So I think that doesn't stop, right? Whether it's in the physical world or it's outside world, you must be as close to your customers. You should know what's going on personally, which makes a big difference. And Abhay, also shout out to you because you have done some very nice mentoring sessions for our Thai members, for our startup innovators. So I think the way that we can all contribute and come back is share our experiences, blog more, write more videos, and not write more videos. I'm saying, write more material out, share more insights out, which will help the ecosystem. And of course, thank you so much for this wonderful session and insights to every single one of you, Anurag, Vijay, Ganesh. It was beautifully done. Thank you so much, Abhay.
Thank you everyone once again. And if anyone wants to stay back for any networking, please feel free to do so, or
Yes.
we can all drop off.
Yeah, we can stay back, Abhay, because there are 140 people by the way.
Oh yeah. So
Wow, that's a lot of people, isn't it? So you guys want to say hi, hello to anyone? We can unmute people, whatever it takes. Okay, I'll stay. I'm going on mute. But anyone wants to interact, please feel free to say.
I would suggest Mani, Anurag, Vijay and Ganesh. If you want to head out, you can. If you want to stay back and answer more questions, please feel free to do so.
Thanks, Abhay. I am unfortunately backed up, but I will go. But thank you for the opportunity, and co-panelists, thank you guys. It was a pleasure. And the audience, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Anurag.
Same,
Bye.
yeah. Same
Thank
here.
you.
I just have to attend those US calls right now. So thank you very much for having me on the panel. It was a pleasure being with the rest of you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Abhay. I need to drop off, and it was nice being part of the panel.
Yeah.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Mani, for joining us.
Right. Yeah. If someone wants to ask any question, I'm around for next few minutes. Yeah, lot we could answer on the chat.
Yeah, I was noticing. I think there was also I don't know if anyone answered, but there were questions around unorganized retail in India.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes,
Sir.
doctor.
Yeah. So like this innovation lab is a organizer of this event. So you are in only in AI or like lot other things also.
Okay, I'll answer that question. So I head Lowe's Innovation Labs in India. It's not restricted to AI. One of the flavors that we brought in today was around AI and analytics in retail. Having said that, we are looking at a lot of emerging technologies, and it's a lot of our focus is on solving for the problems that are more incremental in nature, and many of them are more disruptive as well, right? So when I talk about technologies, it could be any kind of technology that we are open to, which kind of creates that kind of impact, right, in the lives of our customers or our associates, our internal team members, right? It could be haptics, it could be quantum computing, it could be drones, it could be autonomous vehicles. When I talk about disruptive technologies, it could be a bunch of others, right? And when I say incremental, there's a lot of work happening in AI. AI, of course, is also evolving a lot, right? Some of the specific aspects of AI could be more disruptive as well. We are tending towards AGI, but so we are technology agnostic. What we are looking for is partnering with startups who are looking at solving for some of these problems, which can create a positive impact in the value chain of retail.
Okay. And like you are Bangalore based.
Yes, we are Bangalore based, but as you can probably imagine, in the pandemic situation, or anyways, even prior to that, right, we have always been working in a virtual environment, which means that, we work with startups across the globe. Hello, can you hear me,
Okay.
Dr. Harsh?
And have you shared your details also in the mail which you sent for this particular event?
My details, no, what I've done is I've just put it in the chat. I'll put it again.
Yeah, so
But I've
so
given
on
a
the
mail ID.
on the chart, I think there are several names, but I think it is not your name is there in that chat. There
It's
No, no,
was
I
Abhay
just put
Tandon.
it.
Yeah, it's Abhay Tandon. Hey, Abhay, this is Amit from Atlanta. Can I have a minute? Hey,
Sure, please.
yeah, it's 6:30 in the morning. If you can turn on a video, I'm taking a breeze here. Allow me to on my video. We'll see where I am. Abhay, we'd like to collaborate a little bit more. I'm part of TIE Atlanta. And I'm
talking about
connected
participants.
The people who join.
Can everyone else be on mute while we have? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, you're catching me in between running and walking. Yeah. So Abhay, I would like to collaborate a little bit more. I'm part of TIE Atlanta also.
Sure.
And would like to understand more. We just came out of an acceleration program from Merck. We are into B2B. Would like to collaborate more. I have connected over LinkedIn also. So
Sure.
Please let me know what's the best way to communicate, email, phone, whatever works. Would like
Either
to touch
which
base.
way, right? Yeah, sure. I mean, I've just provided my mail ID as well in the chat, which is abhay.tandon@lowe's.com. So more than happy to take the conversation forward, and understand a little bit more about what is your organization, what is the company doing, and I can also walk you through a little bit more about what Lowe's Innovation Labs is all about, what are the kind of areas that we are literally tapping into at this point of time. As I mentioned in the previous answer as well, right? We are not stage agnostic and we are not sector agnostic. When I say we are not stage agnostic, is primarily because if you're looking at disruptive solutions, right, it's not necessary that the technology or the sector specificity needs to come in at this point of time. Primarily because disruptive solutions or disruptive technologies may not be applicable to retail immediately or as of now.
You're right.
Having said that, there's also the probability that that we could figure out an application for that technology in retail as well, or a use case, right? So we keep ourselves very, very stage agnostic, which means that we work with the likes of Magically, Boston Nova, BrainCorp, Boston Dynamics, who have raised billions of dollars. Two startups who are probably 3 people team, very, very young, who have just started something but have very strong capabilities to build a solution. In which case, more than happy to work with them, partner with them, and try to co-develop a solution too. So there are different models that we can talk about.
Yeah, so being in Atlanta, being part of the Home Depot Innovation Lab for like 2016, 2017, we got a little bit of chance. We, as a part of our Emory cohort, also Home Depot always sends 5 people every year as a part of Executive MBA. So kind of pretty much aware of what Lowe's is also doing. Lowe's is on the backdrop of this one. It's all around both Home Depot and Lowe's. So I'd love to interact a little more. I think Ganesh or somebody was talking about cognitive AI. I'm actually working with a startup based out of California, which is Stitch Fix, which is doing exactly what I think Ganesh or somebody from the AI side was talking about, like 60% or 70% of the wastage in the clothing industry. So there's a lot to share and a lot to collaborate upon. I will drop a note and probably we can coordinate from there. I think there's a lot to learn from you guys. I mean, you guys are the pitch or epitome of a lot of things. So would be worth having like a 30-minute session or something with you and team just to share and care, right? And then we can nurture from there. But appreciate this session. A very excellent way to put it through. I mean, couldn't have asked for more. A well worth first 1 hour of the day, 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. Couldn't have asked for more.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so good to hear that you've joined us from Atlanta, and that too so early in the morning. So thank you so much, and that too in between your walk. So thank you so much. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm just between the woods, if you can see that.
Yep. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, Vijayata, we still have 77 people.
Yeah.
Including us.
Yeah, including us. Yeah. So there's 70 people, you can say. Anyone else wants to say anything? Because thank you for being generous with your time, Abhay. That's very nice of you. And Abhay, also, I think some of the things that we must talk about, what do you see as the other, like this is strictly on innovation, startups, entrepreneurs, right? Where else, where else, maybe not just about Lowe's, but where else do you see things happening, Abhay? I mean, you're watching trends, correct? Anything else going on? And I think we have Preetham, we have Ashok Mehta who's saying hello. So, I mean, just quick talk, chat, conversations, yeah.
Sure. I mean, so from my perspective, I think Preetham, Ashok, and others can also, share their perspectives with us. What I personally feel is that, given the current situation of pandemic as well, right, there are certain industries which have obviously gotten a boost as well, right? And things are becoming as contactless as possible. There are clear trends which are talking about, edtech companies which haven't been picking up that steam, unfortunately, because of the paid models, have been able to get that opportunity now. A lot of that thing is moving. We talk about anything which is virtual, digital. Everything is moving so much to digital, of course, and that's where we've also received a lot of communication in different forms and formats where people have said that they do miss the physical experiences too. So that is where I was also mentioning earlier about the importance of physical environment, right? I mean, things can happen digitally, but then there's also a requirement of some physical element to it. So, for example, when and I'm just throwing some examples here, right? It's not only restricted to home improvement, but in home improvement and specifically in Lowe's, when Vijay was mentioning about pro customers, you remember pro customers are contractors, and a lot of DIY customers also, when they come there, they need specialists to talk to you about how do you fit a sink or a wash basin? What are the different tools that will help you finish the offer, get a complete project done, right? So the people in our stores, we call the associates in our stores who are helping the consumers or pro customers, they're not necessarily anyone who can just go there and sell something, right? So there's a democratization of expertise that is also shaping up very, very strongly in favor of physical environment. And how do you convert this physical environment and apply the the best pros of physical environment into the digital environment too? So that's where we also work on a particular area called as tactile e-commerce, so which allows the tactile sensibilities that you typically see in a physical environment to be established on the e-commerce environment. So there are lots of things that are for whom we are seeing the trends which are shaping up really well. If you look at some of them, it's definitely, I mean, I think all of them are very specifically digital, right? In fact, you are also, Vijita, launching this B2B Sales Academy.
Yes, exactly.
Which
Yeah,
is
tomorrow.
going to be a very, very meaningful experience, I'm assuming, considering the current scenario, right? I'm just talking about that, with this scenario, I think people who have been trying to sell, across different channels have found it very difficult, because so far everything has been very, physical in terms of those sales. And digitally also, people who have been doing it digitally also have also faced a lot of screen fatigue. So that means I'm still very happy. I'm very happy that people joined us today, but then people have been having the screen fatigue as well, right? And in that scenario, how do the sales team in every organization, be it a startup or a large organization, function effectively? So I think that is also going to be very, very relevant in terms of the trend that we'll see over the next few
Yeah,
months.
absolutely. Yeah. So thanks for the shout out for the B2B Sales Academy. 1,000 registrations only, Abhay. So it's going to be pretty crazy. Of course, look, we had almost 300 people who joined us today, Abhay. So I think that's also pretty brilliant. And look, I think, Abhay, we owe it to the audience and the people who are joining us to make it as interesting as possible. So some of the
True.
things that we are also looking at. Sorry, someone just said something. I don't know. Anyone wants to join? Preetham wants to say something. Let me just get Preetham. Yeah. Preetham.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Preetham,
Abhay,
go
can
for it.
you? Yeah. Hi, Abhay. Thank you first of all for organizing this session. So I just have a quick question. Given your position, you see a lot of trends which are happening in the retail industry and specifically in the brick and mortar retail. So I have a question like today we spoke about AI and most of the conversations was related from the either from the marketing perspective or the customer data, or how we can use data to improve the top line. But in general, if we see brick and mortar or physical stores, I mean, there are a lot of other operating cost and utilities cost which
Yeah.
actually bring down the margins. So do you have any perspective, or have you seen any activity which I mean which helps businesses, or how can we leverage data in order to improve the bottom line of those businesses?
Oh, totally right. In fact, I think Vijay did mention this very, very specifically, because this is a question that I asked Vijay, that from a large corporate standpoint, AI is not just applicable, or AI analytics are not just applicable towards external customers, but our internal customers, which means our associates, right? And how do we create that kind of impact in terms of solving for issues that they are facing, right? Again, one of the startups that we're just starting to work with is called Discover Dollar, and that's a efficiency play straight away to from a bottom line standpoint, where there are financial audits and leakages, right, that happen because of various kind of overpayments, underpayments, and so on and so forth, any kind of transactional volume that gets displaced. Instead of having a manual audit, can we look at digital audits, which can help us capture those leakages very, very quickly, and help us to plug those gaps, right, much in advance, than waiting for a year and a half or 2 years, which typically happen in a manual audit, right? So that's a bottom line example. Another one that we are doing, which is probably not a I'm not sure right now at this point of time if it's a tangible bottom line impact, but then typically when we look at anything to do around our human resources, right? So there are a lot of internal activities, support functions. Human resources is one of them, and we are working with a startup called Headway.ai, which is helping us digitalize a lot of HR functions, right? And that can create a stronger sense of engagement within the organization, right? It allows our talent pool to be having a strong engagement while they're going through the whole process. It allows our hiring managers to have a much more streamlined experience. Thereby, the amount of time that they're spending to hire is reduced. They're able to find the right candidates, and we're able to bring a solid team together, right? Even once you join in, how do you stay engaged? How do you stay motivated? What are the requirements around the whole play? There are a lot of companies who are working on that, on AI and analytics. That can again be a very bottom line play. Another trend that I can talk to you about, which that we have been looking on, is how do we provide a lot of this analytics to our store associates, and how can they utilize that to take better decisions instead of spending so much of time in terms of resolving issues. Can they focus their time on more meaningful tasks? So the AI ML is going to be applicable across the value chain of retail. Not everything is consumer facing. There's a lot of work that happens before things go consumer facing, and to that there's a humongous application of AI as well. I hope, Preetham, I've answered at least to a certain extent through some of the examples that I'm allowed to share right now. I've been able to talk through some of that. Preetham is on mute, but I hope I've been able to answer. But go, Preetham, I've dropped my mail ID as well in case if you want to have a more detailed discussion on this. More than happy to take it up later.
Abhay, he's replied back. He's replied back saying that thank you. It was very thorough.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yep. Abhay, Amit here again. One more quick thing, especially around this, people having a fatigue, right, with the laptop. So I'm working with Mercedes Innovation Center, exactly on the same thing. They are also based out of Atlanta. Would love to connect you with them. They have been working on it for last 1.5 years, and they have done some of the functions using AI, which can be automated. Things like even setting up a meeting over a voice rather than having admin or people doing it by self. So very, very small things, small interventions on a day-to-day life of any employee. Would love to connect you with Kaushik Datta. Kaushik Datta is the head of innovation of Mercedes Innovation Center. I'll make a LinkedIn connection and probably we can jump on a call. They have done like a lot of pioneering work in the last 18 months. And I have been a part of it for some of it. So let's connect on that thread. There's a lot of opportunity there also.
Thank you. And I really appreciate that, Amit.
Sure, sir. No problem. Looking forward to meet you in a couple of days.
Definitely. Looking forward as well.
Hi, Abhay here, Suresh from Skytech Group, Bangalore.
Hi, Suresh.
Yeah, hi. We are, as some of the panel members highlighted the point, humanless retail. So we are already on it. Like we are developed vending machines with all interfaces to catch up the market in the retail. Actually, we have a unique model of putting them in the apartments.
Okay.
Direct on the last mile connectivity point.
Sure. Very happy to have a detailed discussion on that, Suresh. It's interesting. So we operate primarily out of US, but then unfortunately because of the current situation, the offices are also shut. But we have vending machines. But I would love to understand more about potential synergies that can be developed, even though you're currently operating out of India. If there's a probability of getting this to scale at a US level as well.
Yeah, actually, our vending machines are quite UPI, the Paytm and Google Pay, all kind of interfaces we have done, and and we have also been incubated in the Amartha TBI Center for R&D purpose. So we are building up the app for taking the requirement from the apartments, the consumer market, the next day's delivery can be taken up the day earlier, and we will be putting those things into we are prepared for the delivery. So thereby it's the last mile connectivity, and it's again at the consumer place 24 hours operations are getting ensured. And inside the store, inside the apartment, it's like a mini store we operate, and we have a testing going. We have been tested in Bangalore. All these inside the 5 predominant grade A apartments. So we like to know how this can be taken up further.
Sure. So I'm still trying to figure out what's the exact direct or tangible synergies that we can look at. But more than happy to have a more detailed conversation. I can also talk to you about how we operate as well, and then maybe we can figure out some way to sync up and figure out some synergies. Does that sound reasonable? Can we get into a call maybe early next week?
Yeah, that seems great. Yeah, I will keep a mail up to you. For the discussion.
Yeah, I've shared my mail ID. You can just drop me a note and we'll set up some time next week then.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, the solution which we give also cut down the travel, the delivery and all those issues, right? We are keeping directly at the footstep. So that's more advisable for the COVID.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Vijay, are you still there?
Hi, sir. I'm still very much here. It's 5:30 in the evening, so it's been, I know it's a long time, and we still have 40 folks here. But I think if everyone is done, we can always say bye. But thank you so much, Abhay. I think we should be doing these kind of sessions more often, slightly more impromptu, but get in founders to interact with you and whoever else, right? From the other innovation labs team, whatever. Let's see what works.
Definitely.
Okay.
And many congratulations to TiE Bangalore. Thanks for organizing this awesome event. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amit. Most welcome, sir.
Yeah. So in that case, I'll have to head out right now. I'm super happy to see that people have taken some more time. They've stayed back with us. I just did anticipate that people would stay back half an hour later as well. But thank you everyone for staying back. As I said, we are very approachable. We have shared our mail ID as well. Asta has also shared the overall labs mail ID. I've shared mine as well. Please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to have more detailed conversations, and then take some take into factor some synergies that can be built out as well.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, Abhay. Take care. Shabba care. Be well.
Thank you so much.
And yes, we'll stay in touch, of course. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks. Yes.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Thank you, Sikta. Thank you, everyone.